being recorded now.
Here we go.
And I am, okay, here we go. Middlesex 3 Coalition. I think most of you know who we are, but this is a little bit of who we are. And one thing I'll ask, or two things, is if you could follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter, and we'll include links to that as well too, so we can keep you up to date with not only what we're doing, but what's happening in the region as well too. So that's my one ask for today. And of course, thank you to our moderator, Demetrius Spanius, from President of Land and Sea Real Estate. And obviously, thank you to our sponsors, AHP Architects, the BSC Group, and Reamer and Bronstein. We wouldn't want to be doing this without you guys. And of course, thank you to our panelists. And I look forward to hearing from you guys based on our prep meeting. I think it's going to be a very engaging conversation. So thank you to Corinne Molesky, the Director of Interior Design at AHP Architects, Michael Dalton, Executive Director at Cushman & Wakefield, and Stephen Kelly, CEO of Timberline Construction. Appreciate you guys coming and joining the conversation today. And I put the agenda up here really just to let you know that I believe it's all up to Demetrius and timing, but I believe we'll be opening it up to questions around quarter of. So if you have questions really anytime throughout the conversation, just put them into the chat or the Q&A, and we'll weave those into the conversation as well too. And this is our 9th of 10 webinars. We just had, Demetrius had this idea way back when, and this is the 9th, or the final one is going to be on June 15th. And really then we're going to try to wrap everything into one conversation and look at what's the future of the Route 3 quarter. So that's just a little plug for that. And so I'm going to stop my share. And at this point, Demetrius, I can hand it over to you. And then, but I know we do have a survey as well too. So we'll throw that up whenever you want to do that. How's that?
You know, why don't we start with the survey now? Kind of throw it out there,
Okay.
and just, you know, and we can refer back to that during the conversation.
That sounds good. And so I'm gonna ask Steph if she can put that up there for all the attendees to answer. We haven't done this before, but we thought we'd try to do a survey. And I thought we had 5 questions, but I guess we go one by one.
Oh, hi, Stephanie. You just, the way you have to, I program this and you have to do one at a time. So I'm just
Okay.
going to give everyone a chance to comment, and then I'll keep launching them.
Okay, so if anyone's out there and you're interested in answering the questions, the first one was really if you anticipate, or when you anticipate going back to the office, or if you are already there as well. And Steph, I don't know how long you leave for these surveys as well too. Okay, here we go. Most people never left or are already back. Interesting. Thank you very much. And then the second question is, when back in the office, or if you're already back in the office, how many days are you planning to work on site? And Steph, you can bring that up whenever you get a chance.
Sorry, I'm having a little bit of a delay. Just bear with me.
Here we go. So yeah, how many days are people looking to go back to the office?
I can answer these too. I couldn't answer them before.
Yeah, we couldn't answer the first one.
Oh, can you?
I figured out how to do that too.
Oh, all right, I'm going to answer it as well too. Good, good.
Cool.
All right, we're all learning this in real time. All right, every day. It's kind of what we were hearing in that Boston Globe article and we were talking about earlier. Interesting. Good. All right, well, thank you. And then I've got 3 more questions. The next one is, has your office changed its design or use of space since the pandemic? And does it plan to do so in the near future? All right. Give everyone a few minutes to answer that. Okay. And no, really hasn't changed. Majority of people says it hasn't changed. And Corinne, I think you've talked about that in the past too, but we'll talk more about it as we start the conversation. And the 4th question is, based on the way you work, what do you need at your office now more than ever? I think we all will always need better amenities. Okay. All right, and I'm impatient to get the results back.
It takes a little longer to answer these, so I want to give people another minute or 30 seconds.
Okay. Okay. Nothing. People are happy with their workspace.
Yeah.
I think those of us who own our own companies were kind of putting that, no, it's perfect. What are you talking about?
All right, and the final question. If you're working partially or fully remote, what might bring you back to the office more frequently or full time? All right. All right, and final question. Then I'll hand it over to you, Demetrius. Need to re-engage and connect. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Good, good. All right, well, wonderful. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for your patience. I'm going to hand it over to you now, Demetrius. But before I do, I will encourage everyone, please just take a few minutes and let us know that you're here. Put your information in the chat and so people can connect. But with that, Demetrius, thank you for moderating.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie. And I want to say thank you again to our panelists for being here and joining us. As Stephanie said, we had this idea a couple of years ago. And, you know, boy, when we first started talking about this was pre-COVID and we had really no idea where this was going to go. Obviously, office would have been one of my major topics. I think I initially had it slated for early on in the webinar series, just because for me and being in commercial real estate, it's a major topic for us, and just kind of the evolution of office was always interesting. COVID had changed that, and I put it towards the end of the series because I wanted to see how things were going to evolve over this past year, and not necessarily sure that we have all the answers, but I think we have a panel of experts who know enough to kind of show us the light into the right direction here, where things may be going. So for those of you on the call who don't know who I am, my name is Demetrius Benas. I'm the co-owner of Land and Sea Real Estate with my wife and business partner, Joanne. We are a boutique brokerage that focuses on luxury residential and commercial investment properties. And we're based in Andover. And so that's basically what I do. I'd like to kind of, go around and have the panelists just give themselves a brief introduction. So I'm going to kind of go around the world here of who's sitting at my right. And I will start with Steve.
Thank you, Demetrius. Stephen Kelly, I'm the CEO of Timberline Construction. We're a local construction management firm. We work throughout New England, do a lot of work in the Middlesex 3 corridor, a lot of surrounding towns, as well as Boston, Cambridge, Somerville, the urban core. We work in life sciences, higher ed, private school, commercial office. Well, we run the gamut with pretty diverse portfolio in terms of our sectors. We probably 50% of work is negotiated, so really a value add to our clients. We do a lot of due diligence and pre-construction for our clients. Excited to be on the panel with the great Michael Dalton, the fabulous Corinne Molesky, and the entertaining Demetrius.
Hi, entertaining. Well, thank you. So, Michael, please.
Thank you for everyone's attendance today. And I'll start off just applauding all the people that are on the call with part of the Middlesex 3 Coalition. It's a really, really good group of people that are really trying to just support their local communities, support businesses, and I applaud everybody's efforts and just being transparent about what they can share as we pull ourselves out of this world of COVID. I have been in real estate for a long time. I started way back when with a lot of local assessing offices, so I understand the municipal side, and a lot of my core knowledge comes from back measuring houses in Chelmsford, Massachusetts, and working for the assessor's office there. So go back a long way. My practice right now, Cushman Wakefield, is a majority of either representing tenants or landlords up in that marketplace and trying to put butts in seats. And that's really my business. And I like it. And I love working with, cities and towns and people that are probably on this call today. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Corinne, please.
Hi guys, I'm Corinne Molesky, Director of Interior Design with AHP Architects. We are located in the Boot Mills in Lowell. Started off in Chelmsford 11 plus years ago, and the core of our team has been together over a decade, so we know each other pretty well. We primarily focus on life science, medical manufacturing, commercial office. Similar to Stephen, we do have a lot of diversity in terms of doing also some retail, a little higher ed. So primarily our focus is relationship driven. A lot of our clients, especially the facilities managers, appreciate our attention to them, even if it's a project that's not particularly glamorous or large. We're really driven by maintaining and fostering relationships over long periods of time, and hopefully get to do all types of different projects with those companies. So we do have an awesome base of repeat clients. Many of them are M3 members, including Gutierrez, National Development, and groups like that. So we're really feel very fortunate to work with some awesome people. And to echo Michael, the M3 Coalition has just been a really great group, and I love seeing all the different types of connections that happen here, and especially how unique the group is to have the state and local government involvement, as well as local companies. And Steph and Stephanie always trying to give you guys props and appreciate what you've done here.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you. So, gee, as I mentioned, this was probably the one topic where I really wanted enough time to see how the year was going to evolve and start talking about it, what was going to happen with office. And I think that's also been something that's been on everybody's mind as well. And going the question, do I go home? Do I stay? And we're dealing with all the different parameters and logistics of all the ideas, either being for staying or for going back into office, for expanding or for contracting. And just really quickly is that this kind of hit me as I was seeing the questions that Steph prepared and put up here. And I was looking at them, and I guess the real question goes back to being a dichotomy between kind of people thinking, ease of staying at home and safety versus the human need of wanting to interact and to be with other people. And I think this might be the counterbalance is where we are moving forward. But before we kind of it's just a thought I had as I was looking at that. But as we get into that, I guess I'm going to just throw out the first question, which is, what has happened this past year? And I want to kind of start there and just maybe give an idea of what you've seen and what has happened this past year. How has things adapted and what the market has been. So, I'm gonna start with Michael on this one, and maybe you can run with that.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I think think about what happened to us collectively as a society, and it was a massive shift in just a shock to our system. And I think it speaks to our collective resilience as communities and citizens and parents and coaches, whatever the roles we are, that we've made it, and we've made it this far. And I think what's happened over this past year, as both on the company side, the user side, the landlord side, the community side, the home side, is everybody's just trying to get things in balance and try to figure out a plan to go forward. And I think, the first initial reaction was, oh, the world is over. Well, it wasn't over. Second part is, okay, what can we do in the next, or should we do in the next 6 months? And then, I think right now we're starting to look about, okay, what do we do for the future long term? And a lot of it has been, on our side of the world, collecting a lot of data, talking to a lot of different people, tenants, landlords, employers, users, attorneys, what have you, to get a sense of what people are, where their heads are at. And the good news is I think the result is we've processed a whole bucket of information. I think a lot of people on this call have done surveys, and as we just did. And I think everybody knows, and I think if we, that, the workplace is different than work. So I think technology for the past 20 years with emails and internet and all that stuff, our workplaces, all of us call, have changed, and it goes into our weekends, it goes into our holidays, there's expectations. And, we're all either, taking care of parents or taking care of children or other responsibilities. So the work itself changes. And I think the COVID situation has caused us kind of at least to admit that, yeah, this work has changed and it can be remote. My own career in any real estate broker, right now I'm in the attic of my house. I was just in Billerica, I was just in Bedford, I was just in Burlington, I was in Boston yesterday, and so our worlds change. And it's just still need space, still need a place to go to call home base, but I think we're going through that right now. So
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Stephen, anything you'd like to add to that and what you're seeing kind of on the in the construction world, or what had happened this past year insofar as the market and deliveries?
Sure, and to echo some of what Michael said, I think obviously the whole world, different from other things that have happened in history, the whole world was actually impacted by this. But being a stats and data guy, I believe history is a powerful teacher, and you can look up through history. Post World War II, cities like London were bombed to hell, and there wasn't a hell of a lot left, and yet London came back and became one of the thriving city in the world. New York after September 11th, people thought people would flee the city. New York was rebuilt, and New York became but got back to what they were business as usual. And honestly, I think we're going to do the same thing now. I think our human nature, particularly in the United States, is driven by entrepreneurship and just high aptitude and success. So I think we're going to see everyone's going to emerge out of this uncertainty with I think confidence, some hope. And I think there's a big pent up demand, and the downside to that is the impact on the supply chain, which I think we'll talk about in a little bit. But just to stay kind of on point, I think that we all came out of this not knowing in the early stages. We're kind of figuring this out. It was unraveling as it impacted construction. We had a lot of jobs that were still deemed critical because we work in life sciences. We're building some housing, some residential from private schools. So a lot of our work was still deemed essential, and we stayed working throughout the entire downturn. We had to adapt how we worked, though. There's a lot of COVID protocols that got implemented on different job sites. And that was challenging because it was really driven by each municipality, and each town had their own different way of managing, COVID. So obviously we're starting to come out of that now. There's a certain cost factor to that, fortunately can come off of the jobs, as we're moving forward. But I think that, the trends that we saw, there was a whole lot of speculation that people want to go back to the city, that the urban, footprints are going to get pushed out into the burbs. I think at the end of the day, it varies by sector. Some sectors you really need that in-person, work, and others, can do more remote. So it's going to be some combination. But I saw a global stat that really, flexibility is going to be really important for all companies to offer their employees more flexibility. But in general, blended across a lot of different sectors, it's really only a 20% number that they expect to have some sort of remote functionality. And that's really means 80% of the time they still expect, to have heads and seats, and you need, commercial offices. And I think, in life science in particular, there's such a demand right now, at least, the supply is needing to come online until 2023 to meet the current demand that's even in Cambridge. And obviously that compression is to the benefit of the cluster towns we talked about up through the Middlesex 3 corridor, but also, Waltham, Lexington, all the way up to Andover, so there's opportunity for those other towns where they can offer that supply, that doesn't exist in Cambridge. So I think that sector is obviously going to continue to thrive. Commercial office, I think, is a little bit cool right now, but I do expect it to, come back with a pretty hot, market. It might take 6 to 12 months because companies are reassessing, what's their density. Some companies went to the model of, too dense, going full benching. I think they'll scale that back a little bit, but you're going to see, more amenities added to workspaces, make them the workspaces healthier, just the way the implementing maybe some electrical or mechanical upgrades and improving the cleaning and the hygiene of the spaces. So I think there's a lot going on, but I'm pretty bullish on what's going to happen. I think that there's a lot of pent up demand across all these sectors, and there's a lot of smart people kind of looking at their business plans and understanding what's the impact going to be. And I think at the end of the day, there'll be some tweaks to designing of workspaces, and maybe not as much a demand for the big footplates downtown. And some of the bigger companies might want to still have a presence there, but have a smaller satellite, spot in the burbs too. So I'm seeing a lot of opportunity, and I'm excited, and I don't want to dominate the conversation either. So I'll hand it to Corinne if you want, Demetrius.
Oh, no, that's great. No, actually, you give us a lot of great information on that. I'm going to come back to a couple of your points later on. I do want to hear from Corinne, though, and particularly, what have you seen? And I'm sure, if anybody, your phone was probably ringing off the hook, in the past year, and people looking to adapt their spaces and, to make things more safe and more useful for workers. And in particular, my curiosity was, were you doing a lot of triage work, or is it something, do you think that there are adaptations that are now going to be moving forward?
Yeah, so I think there's an expectation that we would have been getting a lot of calls and like making quick changes or big changes. And honestly, from our perspective, we actually saw a very long pause. We really saw people just say, okay, wait a minute, where's this going to go? And the financial implications of going into a space, especially if you have hundreds or thousands of employees, and making physical changes is very expensive. So I think companies that had to have people on site made changes in terms of, maybe raising partitions or spacing people out, or changing their, work schedules, 1 week on, 2 weeks off, that type of thing, staggering days. But the physical changes, we didn't initially see very much of it all. And like I said, I think it's primarily tied to the financial implication and the unknown. We don't know, in a year or 2 years, are we really just going to be kind of like past this? And if you made a bunch of changes, are you just undoing them and packing everybody in tighter? I think that going forward, there is more mindfulness in terms of our spacing and in terms of flow as you walk through the office, and where amenities are placed and the types of furnishings that you're putting in them. But we saw a reset in terms of people's expectations, and a reset in terms of, okay, wow, everyone can work remotely, look at us. But we didn't see a reset immediately in terms of the physical workspace. We are starting to, get those questions. We're starting to design in a new way going forward. Is it everything on its head? Yeah, some things are on its head, because before COVID, we were doing benching and everybody was, 4 or 5 foot for a workspace, sit, stand, and, hardly any blockage in front of you or beside you. Those types of things we are, making changes to, and we might be seeing 6 by 6, cubicles coming back in certain environments. To Stephen's point, a lot of what is driving this is really that particular and that specific company, how their employees work and what exactly they're doing. So we're seeing just a lot of question marks, and we're seeing a lot of, well, what are they doing? What are they doing? And, everybody wants to come to probably someone like Michael or myself and say, what should we do? And what's the right thing? And we just kind of turn it back to them and, ask questions and help them look at, how they're set up and how much space they do have. But really it's up to these companies to make their guidelines. Are they going to let people work 3 days in, 2 days out? Are they going to have everybody back 5 days? It's very circumstantial based on what that company does and if they feel they can mentor and, raise up younger staff if they're not physically there.
Yes, yes, interesting. Thank you, thank you. I want to kind of swing over and talk a little bit about current market activity. And so, we're talking about what we've been dealing with, and I do believe we're all feeling optimism moving forward. So, what I'd like to, maybe I'll start this with Michael again, and just kind of talk about what you're seeing for current office market activity. Are people moving? Are they expanding? I mean, in my business, I'm seeing a lot of medical dental that's actually turned on the heat these past few months, particularly for smaller offices. And maybe we don't have to focus on the Middlesex 3 area, but if you have any insights into that, maybe we can kind of start there.
Yeah. So, I mean, since COVID and kind of last summer, in that market, we've seen companies, I think to Corinne's point, a lot of companies said, hey, let's take a pause. But then as they started to process that, companies did start to make decisions. So we saw Raytheon Technologies, they have a division called Collins Aerospace up in Westford. They actually renewed their lease and they renewed their commitment to the town of Westford for 230,000 square feet of space. It's a pretty big commitment and something that wasn't taken lightly. We represented them on that assignment, and so that was last June. So that was a good sign. Since that, we've seen the United States Air Force take some space in Billerica with the folks from Gutierrez Company because Hanscom Air Force Base is running out of physical space, which is amazing, but that's true. Hanscom is going through this master planning exercise where they actually, as they're growing their presence, they want to actually house personnel on base because a lot of those personnel that are coming from Texas or Oklahoma or something, they can't afford to be in the area. So it's their obligation to give them good housing. And the easiest thing for them to do is move office space or other work off campus. So that was another deal that was done, 51,000 square feet at the beginning of this year. Huge commitment. And then, we're fortunate enough to work with the good folks from Anchor Line in Cross Harbor up in Lowell. And we were awarded a new lease with the folks from IBM, relocating out of Westford into Littleton for 150,000 square feet. Massive deal. And another good sign of just a company that has made a decision, made a commitment and exercise and has been, committed to the workplace. So, 3 good signs, and just even out in the past few months, there's all kinds of activity on the office side, on the life science side, and on the industrial side that kind of all are vying for opportunities and for space. I know, like up in Chelmsford, the town has been very, very willing to explore and look at rezoning and new opportunities or reusing older buildings, and that kind of creativity is going to really reward and pay off with jobs and new deals. So, because end of the day, there is very little available land in Massachusetts. Still remain a lot of people, and there are still a lot of jobs, and we do expect those jobs to return. Eventually, it's going to take a little bit of time, but that's why we're bullish on the environment.
Yeah. Great. No, thank you so much. Thank you. And so, how about you, other two? Are you seeing kind of an increased activity, either with new contracts or companies as they're moving, looking for new construction or renovations or such?
Yeah, absolutely. In the last 2 months, everything just seemed to come at once, and we've hired and all the systems are saying go. So we're just writing a lot of proposals. We're actually on an ear, nose, and throat office within the Middlesex 3 area as well. Like you were saying, with medical and manufacturing certainly seem to be hot on our plate. But we're seeing people wanting to get back to it. And that, that pause has certainly stopped. Everybody seems to be ready to start back up again.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'd echo that, and particularly in some of those sectors we talked about, life sciences obviously still booming and never really slowed down. There's huge demand there, but even the office space, we're extremely busy. We're going to see a lot of different, we have a big job of doing for Puma over in Somerville right now. That's about 170,000 feet. But we're doing a lot of smaller projects that are in the 30 to 50,000 foot, 80,000 foot range as well. We're seeing a lot of activity. I think people did their assessment and decided what they can at least do now for in the interim, as far as their planning goes. So we've seen a lot of deal volume, a lot of action. A lot of our own clients who themselves kind of did some introspective look, and they made their own decisions. They're moving forward some capital projects that they had put on hold, say last year. But I can tell you, we've hired 25 people since last September. We're in growth mode, and there's a lot of demand out there. And that one of the biggest issues we faced pre-COVID was, talent acquisition, because there wasn't enough quality people, available in the greater Boston area, just with the amount of construction already going on. And I think we're going to see that's going to be an issue, soon as well, as the sub-markets are going to get extremely busy again. Obviously the construction managers are busy, but we see a lot of demand right now. So it's going to be something that, as clients are looking down the road, looking to build projects, they want to be thinking about, getting in as early as possible. And then we can talk about supply chain now or later. I don't know, Demetrius,
that was my follow-up question, because that's something I did want to touch about on, especially since you brought it up earlier, is the idea of supply chain and how that's affecting you and Corinne in particular.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge issue, and it's not Boston centric. It's not the United States. It's really global. The example, China has such a demand for steel. They're actually buying old cruise ships off the cruise industry that are, got decimated during COVID, and they're just scrapping them for the steel. I mean, that should just be a jaw-dropping, data point to tell you how constrained the global supply chain is on steel. But it's affecting everything, lumber, copper, anything made of metal, lighting, your fixtures, anything, your furniture, but even, the whole commodity, cycle is constrained right now, just because there's been so much pent up demand for really the last year and a half globally. And a lot of those manufacturers weren't manufacturing because they had either shut down or at least, significantly scaled back their operations. And now they need to get, people back working again. Not to go too geopolitical here, but the incentives to stay unemployed is really hurting the ability to get the supply chain constraints solved, because those employees who typically hold those jobs aren't going back to work right now. So until they get off unemployment back to work, then we can start manufacturing and ramping up production. So there's a whole cause and effect of what's going on here. But the reality is, I think for the next 6 to 12 months, you're going to see this supply chain issue, be very volatile over, globally, nationally, then locally here in greater Boston area. So it just highlights the need to plan early, get into your planning stages early, get people on board early. You want to get a procurement as early as possible, because the suppliers really don't move till you get them a PO. So you need to get a construction manager engaged. We need to be able to release subcontractors, work with the design teams very quickly in the front end to at least get into the procurement production cycle, to then get, shovels in the ground at some point in the future. So that's really the only solution to try to, manage as best you can the supply chain constraints, is just early engagement.
Yeah, we're seeing similarly furniture. The manufacturers are saying, with the distancing that they have to maintain within the factories, they're less productive. And the same thing what Stephen's saying is, they can't get the employees in there. They're not showing up. And then my other new 4-letter word is tile, which between the shipping crate shortages that are global, trying to get stuff out of Italy is very challenging. And I've had a lot of issues getting tile to my sites. Even products that are supposed to be quick ship and readily available, can't get them. So tile is my new 4-letter word.
Steve, a quick question for you, just for edification. a piece of plywood that you would get 3 years ago versus today? What's that difference?
Funny you asked that question, Michael. I was going to start on some data points. I said I won't go that deep, but since you asked, I'll hit that one, right? I don't even go back 3 years ago. You could get in December, you get a 2x4 for $3 or $4. They're $9. A sheet of plywood that was $15 is now $85. A sheet of copper that was $115 is now $195. A roll of wire that was $100 is now $300, and that's just in 6 months. So that just speaks to the volatility. And
Yeah.
we have subcontractors giving us pricing, and it's not their fault. The lumber suppliers will only honor that pricing 3 days, 7 days.
Yeah.
You can't even barely get your number into an owner and have the owner have the time to do their due diligence before that pricing is expired.
Yeah.
And it's a significant challenge, you know, and
Yeah.
again, that's where we're going to go to early engagement. I spoke earlier. I'm not sure how many people on the call actually understand the difference really between construction management and, say, a general contractor. But in the construction management world, you're brought in early as part of the design team, work with the design team as part of the owner's group to really put the whole program together. And in that, we're actually vetting all of those supply chain issues. And we might look at an early release of critical items so you can at least lock in that pricing at the current day pricing, even if you don't need it for, you know, a certain amount of time. We're doing a $17 million job for adaptive reuse of a mill, which is another great thing you mentioned earlier, Michael, is repurposing some of these older buildings. But with the windows, we target a critical item, and we have to do an early release package. I have to, but we're recommending that to that particular client is get an early release package going on the windows, early release package on all your mechanical, electrical, plumbing equipment, so that can at least get into the manufacturer's, you know, production assembly line. And really, it's critical, because if you don't do it, you're just adding months and months to the back end of the schedule. So end game is speed to market, and the solution to that is invest heavily in planning and get the right team together up front, so that the construction managers can work with the design team, the architects, the engineers, the OPMs, whomever you may have, your own staff, if you have your own staff, and really highlight all of that, the critical path, you know, stuff that's going to be constrained for sure. So I'd recommend anyone who's thinking about doing anything, they should invest heavily in the front end of the planning.
Yes, thank you. So I guess the big question is, where do we go from here? And where do you see things going? In particular, you know, and we can talk about the M3 region as far as that goes. What are you seeing in the future? What are you seeing insofar as design? What are you seeing insofar as what are people thinking for safety measures going forward? What that's actually going to look like? What's the cost of such things? And, you know, what's the cost of developing office moving forward, or the cost of moving office moving forward? Understanding what the supply chain issues, with the design issues, with the just the costs involved, and what's the dynamic? What is this looking like going forward? So just kind of give me your predictions and your thoughts on what you're seeing. So I'll start with Michael on this. I like to start with you, Mike, just because you're kind of sitting at my right hand here. So
Thank you.
He's the Godfather. We start with the Godfather.
right.
Thank you. You know, I think from starting with the Middlesex 3 area, kind of that region, I think we're in relatively good shape, and I think that we have, fortunate enough, we have a very diverse economic community that is, you know, a lot of creative high tech companies, you know, anchored in Burlington that will be remaining anchored in Burlington. In that area, we have a lot of companies in the, you know, call it creative, entrepreneurial, high tech sector that are still going there and still landing there. I think there's someone had spoken earlier about a couple of new deals in Northwest Park, for example, that are kind of lifting that boat. Is Bill Ricca is changing and to kind of meet that as well. Medical devices and life sciences, and you add that all in. And compared to like when I started in my career, where it was just you know, digital, Apollo, and Wang, and that was it. We now have a very, very diverse community. And then if you add in healthcare with Leahy and Brigham or what was Partners, and you think of all those different things that are going on, plus the educational community, Northeastern and UMass Lowell. It's actually a pretty good story. pretty good story. I think, what could be choking us off ultimately is the supply of land. And also, we have a lot of older buildings that were built in the digital wing and in Apollo days, some of which are kind of long in the tooth. And I think cities and towns will need to be receptive about how they change those. And I think they are, but they might be a complete change. Like they could be gone and something else built new. And that's something that's very popular in other parts of the country. Hasn't really happened to us locally because we've been very passionate about our two-story red brick buildings that populate our market. In the big conundrum is downtown, and how that return to work comes. I think a lot of companies are making some pretty big decisions about coming back to work and will come back to work, but downtown will lag a little bit because it's the places it's hardest to commute to. It requires public transportation, and it's going to be a work in progress as everybody gets to a level of trust in terms of vaccinations. I think the governor came out the other day and said that I think 70% of everyone in Massachusetts is at least one shot, which is an incredible thing. And so long as that continues and we all kind of generally move in like the tide, I think things are going to be fine. I think the suburbs are better, will be better. The downtown will lag, but lab and all that that will filter in behind it might be a little bit of a change going forward for everyone to process, understand. I mean, the lab market is, as Steve will tell you, is just incredible. So the amount of activity out there. So I think it's just taking a little bit of time to process. I think we'll all get there. But I like our, for everyone on this call, in terms of the Middlesex 3 area, I like where we're positioned.
David, what do you?
Corinne, you want to go? Do you want me to go?
I'll go. I guess a little bit different spin on that would be, I think the companies right now going forward have to decide how they're going to define their company culture. Are they going to have hybrid as a permanent fixture? Are they going to offer that? Some of these sectors, they have a pressure on them in terms of employee retention to offer flexibility. And I would say flexibility is going to be a big buzzword. As much as collaboration was pre-pandemic, I think flexibility, if you start noticing that word, it's going to be popping up a lot, because that's the question, is how flexible are employers going to be, and what does that mean for their workforce? Are they going to have to offer that flexibility of being fully remote in order to be competitive in some of these sectors? Does that even work with their model? Does that work with their company culture? Do they want, to offer that? So I think first, these companies really have to think about what it is they're going to do. What are they going to look like? What is their company culture going to be? Some of the design, implementations are, like I said, spreading out more. The partitions are not going to be down here. They're going to be up here, or they're going to have a piece of acrylic. And, that's something that they're going to just automatically do. There's going to be more accommodation for huddle rooms and phone rooms where you've got a nice looking background and your lighting looks good, because we're doing a lot more Zooming. So there's going to be more accommodation for that, especially if it's a company that's set up with some employees at home, some in the office, and they're trying to, get them together. Even within the company, there'll be more Zooming potentially. So I think they have to start with that definition of what they want things to look like, and then they're going to structure based on that.
Yeah. Great points.
So I'll go holistically first, Demetrius, right? So to be successful, you need opportunity, right? So first, look at the opportunity curve. Boston is now the life science capital of the world, for those who don't know that, okay? I would argue we're already the higher ed capital of the world. I'd argue we're the healthcare capital for the world. We're top 5 financial market, and we have a lot of pent up demand. So I think Boston's going to thrive. And as Boston goes, greater New England goes. Everything feeds off of Boston, you know. So to me, you know, some of the data points that Michael referred to earlier, Cambridge, 100% occupancy rate right now. Okay, they're already at 100%, which just is to the benefit of all of the towns from, you know, north and west of Cambridge. The industrial market, industrial space, probably 06, 07, 08 was only about 40% occupied in the 495 belt. It's 100% occupancy right now with the demand on the last mile delivery and manufacturing and industrial uses, you know. So there's a huge opportunity right now for towns to embrace that. You know, they need to have obviously a forward thinking planning board that's attracting businesses and being supportive of the approvals. And some of the folks on this call do a great job of that already. But, you know, with Boston being that side of the demand, I see it as a huge opportunity for all the towns in and around Middlesex 3. I encourage collaboration because, you know, companies who are moving, they want to be able to attract their people, and there has to be more than just a nice building. It's got to be like a community, you know, feel to it. So that type of collaboration, you know, working with multiple towns like Middlesex 3 does, builds clusters. Clusters attract human capital, and you know that's really to me the biggest advantage we have over most places in the world is our human capital. You know, we happen to have a higher per capita education rate than I think anywhere else in the world, just with the density of schools we have in and around Boston, and that's what's really attracting all these major, you know, global corporations to come here and call it home. Actually, I love this too. Where you could probably argue we're now the shoe capital of the world, you know, between, you know, Reebok being downtown, you know, Clark's is on 128. We got Puma we're doing, you know, Congress is downtown, you know, so we've just attracted a lot of global companies to Boston. And as Boston goes, the suburbs go. And I think it's a huge opportunity right now for us to, you know, really reposition and reset and see what we can get out of the next, you know, 5 to 7 years of the economy. But I'm very bullish on it. And you know, that's kind of a higher holistic level. And then, like Corinne mentioned, yeah, there's gonna be some stuff we have to change, how we build things a little bit here and there. But that will vary again by client need. You know, they're really gonna drive that. But you know, the point Corinne made earlier about flexibility, that's a huge must now for companies, because employees have found out what it's like to have that, you know, little bit of freedom and working from home when they can. And I think that's here to stay. You know, companies have to adapt their culture and evolve to that if they want to be successful attracting the talent they have now. You know, current millennial generation and Gen Y is, as of 2020, 67% of the national labor force, but by 2024 will be 82% of the national labor force. So it's really important for the leaders to understand what's important to that demographic, and a lot of that flexibility is, you know, commitments to sustainability. You need to be able to attract those people to your company. So it's important to understand what matters to that demographic. If you understand that, you know, in 3 short years, there'll be 82% of the national labor force.
Yeah.
Fantastic. No, that's great. So I'm going to bring Stephanie back in because I know we've had some other questions from participants, and I'll just kind of hand it over to her.
Yeah, no, great. And this a great conversation, guys. And so we do have we have one question. I've got a question as well too, but I want to encourage people, if you also have questions, please put them in the Q&A or the chat box. But first, I want to get to Erin's question over at the Lexington Chamber. And I know I've heard this from the Burlington Chamber as well too. And I'm asking, or she's asking, if the panel can address the trickle-down effect on the retailers and restaurants that surround the office buildings. And they hear from their members who run these kind of businesses that until the employees come back to the office, their small businesses just won't recover.
Yeah, we see it firsthand right out the window in Lowell, in terms of a lot of these restaurants are only open certain days or from dinner on. So from a lunch, you know, opportunity perspective, they're really looking for more flow before they can do that. On the flip side, I would say there is going to be some companies that have more amenity pressure on them from employees who really want more variety and want, to be accommodated. So they kind of go hand in hand that way.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that, you know, just nationally, there'll still be restaurants and bars that go out of business by 12/31. And they're saying the gross impact in that sector is 60% of attrition, right? Across the country, 60% of bars and restaurants will go out by 12/31 of 2021. So now you dial it down locally, you know, they're desperate for help. One, they can't even get employees to come back because we mentioned earlier with the extended unemployment benefits, that hurts them even getting their lower compensated employees and to help them save their business. And two, they're not getting it on the demand side due to some, town restrictions. Some are more flexible than others. So that's a sector that is absolutely in need of support. I'd encourage everyone to support the local restaurants and bars if they can. Obviously, Michael mentioned, vaccinations are pretty widespread now. Well, theoretically, we're ahead of most states in the country. So you could say, I think the herd immunity rate is, 80%, Michael, if I'm correct. Is that?
Yeah, that's above my pay grade, but I think we're getting there.
So yeah, listen, those folks
Yeah.
need the help, man. So
Yeah, they do.
Can do it. It is a sad byproduct, right? So if we don't really occupy, there's still a lot of businesses I know that are still saying we're not going to come back till after 12/31. In there, the hundreds, the thousands of employees in these big office buildings, and it's a sad reality, But again, if you go holistically, there's been other downturns. Out of everything that's bad, another door opens and something good comes, and there'll be new restaurants and new bars that will open up and prosper, and it's a new economy.
So I have, the fortune to work downtown and work all kinds of different places. And, downtown is a ghost town. One of the challenges about downtown is that, all those businesses are gone. A lot of them. There's very limited places to get sandwiches. So the good news for the ones that are left is they are busy. But on the flip side, if you go up to Burlington, there's a lot of stuff that's open, a lot of things where you can get food and you can get different things. So I again go to those markets. It seems like it's better up there than it is in Boston. And I think once people start to return even more, in the what we're hearing on our side of the fence is Labor Day is a very big kind of day where companies are starting to more affirmatively saying, hey, we're all going to kind of get the train rolling again in September. So it will take some time to reset that business in the retail sector. It's a hard business. I worked in a restaurant, part of my youth, and it's a hard business. It's a really hard business, and they do need our support. So I hope certainly, and I think it will come back eventually. It might just be a little different. So
Yeah, and I think Burlington Mall is going to be opening up some more restaurants as well too, right?
Yeah.
So Stephen, just to clarify, you said 60% of the bars and restaurants will close by the end of the year or will recover by then?
No, so the anticipated stat is obviously a big chunk of that they've already closed, but the gross and totality impact will be a 60%, net at the end of the day of restaurants and bars nationally will have gone out of business from COVID's implementation till 12/31 of this year.
Okay, thank you.
That's staggering if you think about it.
it is. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I have one other question as well too, and Michael, I think you touched upon it, but I just wanted to see if we can get into a little bit more detail. And I'd like to see this from the perspective of the municipalities, and how can we help them and provide them with more insight to make their towns more attractive for businesses. And you talked about, COVID aside, we have a lot of 1980s or 70s office buildings as well too. And so just looking at outside the area, what are some of the best practices that we're seeing outside the area that or inside that some of our communities should be looking at to try to encourage more businesses to look at those buildings as well? What can they do? What steps can they do to be more attractive?
Well, yeah, I think one of the things to kind of the good news, bad news about Massachusetts, and I've been here 56 years, so I've never left. Grew up here. We've got, I think it's 356 cities and towns, all with their own form of government. Some of them are, mayoral, selectmen, town meeting. Everything's different. And so there is not a general consistency to the way, one town does things versus another. And if you look in, so that just makes it hard, and it's unique, and it's special, but it does make it hard to transition sometimes. And sometimes there are more regional patterns and regional things that are slower to transition here in Massachusetts, just because of that structure. I think cities and towns that are progressive in not thinking, but just receptive to the fact that land value on the commercial side or the industrial side is going to change. And it's part of life. It's going to change. say going back to those red brick buildings, well, they were built for a reason in an environment where cities and towns then kind of accepted their being built. And I think right now the idea is, hey, can those buildings be either changed or repurposed or reused or maybe leveled and something else goes in them? We've seen a lot of buildings up in our market repurposed for collaborative schools. Great, what an unbelievable benefit to the different cities and towns that are out there. We've seen, people talk about, some older buildings being raised and converted into something for regional distribution centers or last mile delivery. It's a change in our economy. It just is, and we're all using it. And I think one thing that the cities and towns need help with, especially a lot of the people on this call, is just that data and say, look, I think to Steve's point, you can look back at history and say, hey, Billerica Road didn't exist in Chelmsford 30, 40 years ago. It existed, but none of those buildings did. And back then the town embraced Ray Carey and built a lot of that neighborhood. And guess what? It's being now rebuilt and rechanged and redone. And it's part of history. And we just have to embrace that. And so long as we have good guidelines about how things are gonna, not interfere or hurt each other, that's the right approach. And so I think we owe it to the municipalities and the people that are stakeholders to give them the best amount of data that they can to make the right informed decision about how they want to see their town grow.
I just chime in, knowledge is power, right? So to me, you have to educate people. It starts with the town economic development committees have to really educate their planning and zoning boards. And every town have these, not in my backyard, people will show up with the pitchforks, and every time there's a development going in, they want to burn down the town hall, but there's towns in the state now that could be used as case studies that were once thriving. They got rid of the commercial tax base. They're struggling now because then the only solution there is increase the tax base on the homeowners, and then homeowners move up because the property taxes are so high. So you have to educate on that kind of cause and effect. There's a direct linear path to that. And if you educate the planning boards, and then you actually educate the residents who show up with the pitchforks and want to burn the town hall down, and realize your property tax is going to double in the next 5 or 10 years if we don't have a commercial tax base contributing to the success of the town. You can't satisfy all of the, especially today with social media, it's kind of ridiculous, but I don't want to get on that right now.
Right.
But it gets into like withstanding all the speech from the 5 people who show up at a zoning board and just want to yell and scream. You got to put up with that and just listen. But it's for the long-term interest of the town, both for the commercial and residential tax base, to be pro-development and get companies in there. They actually provide jobs now. It's not just the tax base; they provide jobs to the local people within the town. There's a ton of upside to having a good kind of public-private partnership for every small town. And I think you have to be able to withstand some of the insanity that goes on in those town meetings. I know it's easier said than done, and I respect everybody in the town, from the towns and municipalities who are on the call right now. It's not an easy job. My sister's one of those lunatics in my town, but so I live it firsthand. But you got to educate them on the benefits of encouraging, businesses come and be a part of your town.
Absolutely agree. Thank you. And as we wrap this up in the next minute or so, actually, Corinne, you've been quiet this last couple of minutes, so I'm going to give you the last word on that. Any ideas or comments or thoughts or suggestions for the towns?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit at the beginning before the call about Chelmsford and everything that they're doing to try to initiate. I think everybody looks at Burlington as a great model of, imagination and flexibility and being collaborative and, raising something up that has so many amenities, and it's just a really nice blend of, all these types of buildings coming together. That's a great example of it working, and it not just sitting stagnant, not taking something beyond just the 2-story brick buildings and either modifying them or, just peppering around them all the amenities that people are really looking for. So I think we continue to look at Burlington and how they've done a great job there.
Right.
The high grade architects like Corinne Molesky to redesign that old 2-story brick building.
I was thinking of like what those bathrooms usually look like in those buildings, and I've done a lot of those over, a lot of lobbies and restrooms. But I mean, there is an expectation at some point that the employee is going to walk in and see something at least fresh and clean and new. So yeah, there are some general building upgrades that that are super helpful that we do come alongside.
Great.
So Stephanie, I think we've hit it.
I think we are, and thank you, everybody. I love the chemistry among this group. You can tell that you guys have worked together and that you know each other, and it's good to see. So thank you all for your time and the discussion as well too. And I know I've learned a lot as well. Just eavesdropping.
This was great. I mean, you guys have great energy and just wealth of information. Stephen, it was fantastic. Just to it's all the points you hit, which I think were on a lot of our minds. So thank you for that. And Michael, thank you for your insights and always a pleasure. And in hearing what your idealism and thoughts for the future. So thank you so much for all of you.
And I'll end the thank yous with thank you to you, Demetrius, for moderating the group as well, and thank you to our sponsors, AHP Architect, the BSC Group, and Reber and Bronstein. That's great sponsors. So we appreciate everyone's time. I know people are jumping off as well too. So it's a beautiful day. I look forward to seeing everybody in person soon. But until then, we do have one more Zoom meeting next month as well too, that we'll be wrapping this up. But so thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time. Have a great day.
Be safe. Thank you.
Be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
all.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.